Little St. James Island. I'm sure most of you know it by a different name. But what if I told you there was a secret that nobody is seeing and it's staring everyone right in the face? People have gotten so laser focused on the specific details of the former resident and his accomplice that they haven't been able to put aside their emotions, broaden their outlook, and see the real truth. Now, of course, because we're at YouTube, we're not allowed to talk about things that might cause people to clutch their pearls. So once again, do you want the truth? Or do you want the sanitized version of everything that's free? Because that's the future. If you want it for free, it's going to be sanitized, and it's not going to be real. Join us over at Patreon. It's only $1, $1 per month. And according to the Bitcoin folks, dollars aren't worth anything, so it shouldn't be any great loss, right? It's even less than that. If you pay for an entire year up front, it comes out to something like 90 cents per month. $10 and some change. We've been able to partner with Vimeo, once again, not for free. You don't have to pay for that. I have to pay for that. But I'm willing to do that to bring you guys the real truth that everyone should have seen by now, and nobody has. But in today's video, I'm going to ask a series of questions that I would like my audience to ponder. They're philosophical questions, but they are going to apply. The former president, 45, has come out unequivocally and stated that he is for the US dollar only and is against anything that's not the US dollar. I'll give you links. He said it multiple places. I even put links to that on my communities tab here on YouTube. If he were to somehow regain his former office, what would that spell for the folks that are so enamored with cryptocurrency? He was asked specifically about it. He didn't have very many nice things to say. You see, that would be a choice then, wouldn't it? So it'd be choice A or choice B. If you knew this guy, the return, would spell doom or disaster for something you're so enamored with, that might give you pause. Now let me ask you another question. If shit hits the fan, things go south, and people are forced into hard choices, which one of these two choices would you believe is worse? I suppose it would depend on your perspective. You see, cat burglars at the bottom are laboring under the idea that the things that they rob can be hawked or pawned or sold for some currency that they can then use to survive on. There's no middleman in the upper image. And I'll let you guys just figure out with your own minds, your intelligent folks, what that represents. Escort services and different types of things like that. There's no middleman. And there's been a demand for it for literally all of time. Now, think about that in the context of this. Lock it down and piss people off. How quick thinking stopped a ransomware attack from crippling a Florida hospital. 16 January 2022. It was approaching midnight on Sunday, and the head of IT at a Florida hospital had a problem. The emergency room of Jackson Hospital, a 100-bed facility on Florida's Panhandle, called to report that it couldn't connect to the charting system that doctors use to look up patients' medical histories. Jamie Hussey, Jackson Hospital's IT director, soon realized that the charting software, which was maintained by an outside vendor, was infected with ransomware, and that he didn't have much time to keep the computer virus from spreading. The hospital shut down its computer systems on his advice. Quote, if we hadn't stopped it, it probably would have spread out throughout the entire hospital. So they had to revert to pen and paper, and they kept the thing running manually. Now, of course, ransomware is what? They infect your computer, and then they demand some type of recompense to give you access to your systems again. Well, maybe people should ask themselves, what if the ransomware folks, the people that infected the computers, were forced into that position because they lost their jobs because they wouldn't get the poke? Somebody who's working for a big company, and they said, everybody's going to mandatorily have to have this medical procedure, or we're going to fire you. And they were fired, and they decided to get into ransomware to get paid in crypto, which the vast majority of ransomware is always in crypto, by the way. See, DeSantis coming out and saying we're not going to enforce these federal mandates, the healthcare mandates. What that does is it gives people the option to stay in proper employment. It doesn't force them into the criminal sector. Now, of course, the left is saying, well, they could just go get the poke. Well, you see, that's a choice now, isn't it? I used this example long ago. Victoria Treese here in Florida lost her job because of the 2020 sniffles. Place she was working shut down. She's making 10 times what she was making before through a website called OnlyFans. You see, it's all a calculation. Everything is a calculation. If this, then what? If this then happens after that, then what do I do? What are all of my options? An AI can only analyze the options that it's programmed to consider. What if there are other options, other avenues the AI doesn't know about? You see, this is the arrogance of people who think AI is going to take over the world. It's just ridiculous. They can't possibly know, meaning program, all of the possible outcomes of all different choices, then the results of those choices, and then the results of those choices. Here's something nobody's talked about. You see, this would be another option, but what does the word legal do here? It's appeal to authority. See, it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make prostitution right. It just disinvolves the authorities with it. There's no effect on the moral or the morality or how anyone who was, quote unquote, forced to engage in it would feel, other than the fact that maybe they wouldn't have to worry about going to jail. See, some people think survival is this. Historically, if you look back historically at countries and localities that have been forced into survival situations, it's rarely been groups wandering through the woods, scavenging for rabbits and all this kind of garbage, where their primary considerations were food, putting up shelters and finding clean water and all this. All those things were always available. It was just, what did you have to do to get them? Even in the most collapsed of societies, you go over to Africa. All of the things necessary for survival, it's there. Food, fresh water, shelter. It's just a matter of money. It's just a matter of money and what people are willing to do to get the money to get the things they need. And here's the bigger point. Shame is something that has been relative throughout history, even in this country, for the last 100 years. What was shameful 100 years ago is not shameful now. And there are things that were shameful then that aren't now, and vice versa. Both directions. Things change. It goes to the level of shame that you're willing to tolerate. And this is kind of a hint, by the way. See, back in the 1920s, certain things went on that weren't shameful, that today are quite shameful, quite horribly, almost criminally shameful. And also then, things that were shamed, things that were seen as horrible, today are perfectly fine. It's about choices, and it's about perspective, and it's about what are you willing to accept in your life? What level of shame? See, some people might look at the guy on the left and goes, oh, that's shameful gluttony. And then others would look at this guy and they go, oh, that's shameful vanity. See what happened there? See, there's always going to be a group of people. There's always going to be a group of people willing to shame you for something. Oh, this guy just thinks he's too cool for school. Walking around like that. He's got his pants open here and you can see his underwear, and he clearly spends way too much time at the gym. He's super vain. And this guy over here, overeats knowingly to the point that it affects his health. You see, it's about perspective. It's about perspective. What are you willing to tolerate in your life? What are you willing to do? And this is the last example. People talk about modesty. It's garbage. Modesty is relative from the 2010s to the 1980s to the 1960s to the 1920s. It varied wildly. Behaviors, states of dress, all this kind of stuff. So nobody pulling out the Bible and using the word modesty has any idea what they're talking about. So I will leave it there, but join us. Join us at Patreon. I have something to share with you there. I have something to share with you at Patreon that I can only share with you there. And it only costs $1 per month. And like I've said before, if you go there, you check out the content, you can direct message me at Patreon. You can't here at YouTube. You can send me a message and say, Florida Maquis, it's just not worth $1 to me. It's not. So can I have my $1 back? Absolutely. I've done it for quite a few folks. They couldn't handle the truth. They couldn't handle it. So God bless. Have a happy Sunday. Like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.